without any further ado, I introduce Dr. William Cohen.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you for coming to speak.
Thank you. Yeah, I walk a little funny nowadays. I have to tell you that I was president until last August. I left in August. I started a new company for international training and was about to leave to Mexico. That's the logo on the left. And that's when I had a massive stroke, which I was paralyzed totally. I was in a hospital for 3 weeks and I couldn't walk, I couldn't talk, nothing. And I'm still not through rehab, but I work out every day and I get a little stronger all the time. And so Jenny and I talked about when would be a good time to come back to speak. And I said, well, I think I'm driving now, so let's do it. So you have the, I put this research together directly, especially for you on innovation, because it's something that's important for all of them, all organizations. But it really resonates around this place because, as you know, being students or having been here, that we do things differently here. So let's see if I can work this thing now. It's left to go forward, right?
Right to go forward.
Right to go forward, okay. Go right forward.
So we're getting done.
Well, let me try that.
Oh, the same thing happens to me.
All right.
There you go.
There you go.
Okay. You know, we see Peter Drucker's pictures all over this place. And as Rick said, he was my professor when I got my doctorate at Claremont. And we became close and good friends. And a number of my books, last 5 books I think I've written about what happened had to do with Peter Drucker. He said that any organizations which keep doing what made it successful in the past will eventually fail. And that sounds, geez, how could that be? But it does, and it not only is, but you can see it in some cases because of technology. For example, the automobile put the buggy whips business out of business. But it happens in a lot of other ways also, and I found it in doing this research that it's really true with a lot of companies that you will recognize. And the other thing he said was that innovation is one of 2 really basic, fundamental concepts or functions of any business or really any organization. So we'll see if I remember how to do that. There we go. Okay. Now, Fortune magazine, there's a Fortune 500 companies. It's the largest companies, at the particular time. And in 1955, there were 500 corporations. Many of them were multi-billion-dollar corporations. That's a lot. So these are really big companies. Now, how many of those companies, of those 500 in the last 60 years, how many do you think are going to get $1 billion, man? You think, boy, you really have to screw up to spend that much money. It'll take me a day or 2, I'll tell you. And I could make some crack and make a joke about my wife spending, but I might get back to her. That would be disastrous, so I don't want to say anything. But at any rate, and anyway, she's a clinical psychologist, so she deserves it, I think.
So this is on tape here, so we can
I
black
know.
out you and
I know. Yeah, some of you know where I'm Rob, who knows where I'm well. Okay, so out of 500 corporations, how many do you think are still in business today? Yes, sir.
I'm going to take a guess. I'm going to say 3. IBM, GE, and General Motors. That would be my guess.
Oh, we had 500. I mean, come on, everything.
I would say 30.
100, that's all right.
I would say
round.
30.
I said 3.
30.
Still
I'm
sticking
10
on
times
that.
more than you are.
We have any
Okay, I'll
other,
put 40.
have any other thoughts?
100, 125. I'd say about 30% of them.
I think the answer is going to be 0.
No. I think I would have probably agreed with your issues at 0, but actually, the real number is 71.
Okay.
Wow.
And still,
I was the
big
closest with 30.
considering that.
12%.
Well,
Yeah, I was
also was
closer with,
closest with 100, I think. Right, and went closer than 100. Yeah. And so it, strange though it may seem, and so they go under. And the reason they don't do anything is because of innovations. Like, well, how many remember Blockbuster? Man, these guys, they were a $84 billion business, $84 billion by themselves. And they were doing great guns. They were, my gosh, they had some great innovations there. They were the first, they did this within 4 years. They were the #1 rental business of videos in the country, and they maybe in the world, and they were really, really, really doing well. And I mean, it got so, and some of the innovations were really unique. I mean, you rent a video from them, and you get popcorn. They give you popcorn also, or take home with you. So remember that? That was a pretty good thing. Well, and one thing, they had a bad policy. They were making lots of money at first. Does anyone know what the policy is they had? Late fees. You were late, they penalized you. And the founder of Netflix, in fact, had rented a movie. I think it was, what was the name of the one in space with Tom Hanks?
Apollo 13?
Yeah, Apollo 13. He rented Apollo 13 and he had to pay a late fee of $40. And so he started Netflix, and Netflix had no late fees. And these guys just didn't run. They were making money from it. I mean, they actually had it was a moneymaker in itself.
A profit center, their fines.
It was a profit, in that sense, a profit center, but it was the wrong way to go. And you see, when you don't innovate, one of the things that happens is, maybe not for late fees, but for something else, it makes it easy for the competition to get in and take your business. And that's what happened with Netflix. So this $84 billion business filed for bankruptcy in 2010. Oops, going on like that. Borders, I thought they were great. I mean, they were doing really well, and they were hung up on big space, and so they got all kinds of space. They bought some additional space, and they were really doing well. And then all of a sudden they came up against the internet. Now everybody that was selling, in brick and mortar went down because the internet to a certain extent. But these guys, they didn't know what to do. Now the smart guys got in the business of selling to the internet themselves. They didn't. They subcontracted to Amazon, which is really a competitor in that sense. So they never developed their own business, their own product line. They decided that music was a nice thing to focus on. They had a nice music department, and so they focused on that. They focused on DVDs, which were also going out, of business at the same time because of the internet. And they combined together, and as doing so, they wrote their own obituary, and they failed. Circuit City. Hi, how you doing?
How are you, sir?
You sure you're in the right class? You don't recognize me, do you?
No, but I am right.
Oh,
I do
okay.
recognize you. But I never met you.
Well, this is class. Hi, my name is Bill Cohen. Yeah. This used to be known as the classroom, but Jenny tells me now this is classroom A. And so I was happy that I'm speaking in classroom A, and wondering what would happen if she said classroom B. Well, that would be a little boy's room. Yeah. So anyway, Circuit City. This is right very close by in Pasadena, right near where I live, and just down the street. And they were doing great guns, and I thought they were doing fine. And then they got a brilliant idea. They were having trouble with their cash flow. It was their bottom line wasn't working out. And so they came in a brilliant idea. They said they fired arbitrarily. This is an innovation, which goes to show that all innovations are not necessarily good. That's why I was always fighting here is every time someone came to me, Harish, when you came to me and said, we got to make things easier. I said, no, we got to make things tougher, if anything. Don't make things easier. And our first two students, by the way, were Jenny Ta and Penny Lee. And so, I mean, certainly we made the right decision with Jenny. And so she was a great VP for me, and she's been a great president. I know she's done really a great job. So they arbitrarily fired their 3,500 employees, their highest paid. Of course, not their executives, but all their people in their stores. And they thought, and they announced that we're going to find people who do the same job for less money. So they probably did, but they got rid of all their innovators. And yeah, and they could see this right away. That's the other thing. If you're going to make some change, which I think someone must have said, this is not the right way to go, then at least, do a little test, see how it's going to work first. And they saw the first month that sales started going down because these guys were all in the stores. And within a year, they were out of business. They're absolutely out of business. They could not operate. Had this big building out in Pasadena. How many of you have seen that building? You seen that? Yeah. Now
That's the one off the.
Now it's a supermarket. I mean, so it's Sprouts. Yeah. So, else they went. Pan American. Now these guys were really successful. They started after World War II. They had routes. They were very good in their strategy. They got international routes. They had more than anyone else. They had service to 84 different countries. They were really doing great. But they made one little mistake. When the fuel shortage came, they didn't innovate. They just kept doing what they had been doing. And they went bankrupt. Built multi-billion-dollar business. They went bankrupt. Polaroid. Now, I'm old enough, of course, to remember the first Polaroid camera. It was amazing. You could see. Rick, you're not my age, but when you're
It was high tech for
catching
my
up on me.
generation too, Bill.
You're catching up on me though. But anyway, so here we got Polaroid, and what an amazing, Al, don't smile. You're right with me too, I know.
Yes.
So,
Now I remember.
here was a camera, you could take a picture, and you could sit there for a minute, take about a minute or so, I forget how long exactly it took, but it developed it right in front of your eyes. Amazing. Incredible. And it was a great innovation, but they could not accept when the innovation of digital cameras came along that this was a future. This was the future for all types of photography. And so they didn't innovate until it was too late. By the time they got in there, everybody else were already making these things, and they went out of business. Xerox, they had a 914 that got 100,000 copies a month. An incredible number of copies. And they had a research center they started. And that research center did all kinds of things. They developed a mouse. They developed all kinds of innovations that you've heard about, but you didn't hear that it was Xerox. I mean, we don't, when we get this little gadget that you move around over there, we don't call this the Xerox, right? Yet we still go to machines and go to, we talk about Xeroxing something, and it's not a Xerox machine at all. But not the mouse and not about a dozen other really, really hot inventions. They decided that 914 was a winner, which it was, and so they focused only on that. And all these other things, they licensed out and let these other companies. And believe me, Hewlett-Packard, Microsoft, Apple, they all borrowed their technology, which they didn't have one of these great research outfits. And they're not out of business, but they're not making that much money either. But these other guys really prospered, really did well.
Yeah, back in the 70s and 80s, they were huge.
Yeah, they were really big. And now, Toys R Us, terrible. Yes, this is a place that you always went if you were buying Christmas gifts and you waited for the last minute. Shucks, too late. Go over to Toys R Us. It was the first really wonderful supermarket for toys, the toy supermarket. But they were getting more competition from the Walmart and Target, and finally they too filed for bankruptcy last month. Now, why do you think why did they get out? What was wrong with it? What was the competition doing that these guys weren't doing?
Amazon.
Partially Amazon or anybody selling by the net, but why, Target's doing okay, Walmart's doing okay sometimes. Why did Walmart and Target, they haven't declared bankruptcy, Toys R Us did.
Yeah, but Amazon is stealing business from
Yes,
Well,
yes,
well,
all the internet, you know, taking it from but you can be successful in it. Why are these two guys successful and why the Toys are not?
The only thing I can think of, I'm sure I'm wrong, because you wouldn't have asked the question if there were an easy answer.
Oh, I don't know.
But my first guess, just from a financial point of view, would be that Toys R Us sunk its assets into stores with a certain number of square feet. And then because Target and Walmart are huge and probably have a lower contribution to unit cost per square foot of real estate, that they were able to have toy sections and they were able to beat Toys R Us prices.
Well, I'm sure that's part of it. I'm sure that's part of it, Rick.
That's what I would think.
But there's one other thing too, I think,
I knew
that's
that.
important. Well, there's something else I think that's even more important than that. And that is that Toys R Us is not a discounter. Target is a discounter, Walmart is a discounter, Toys R Us not. Now, it didn't make any difference for a long time. That was the, you got the cream of the crop for toys, and you can get it even when no one else has it. But it became more and more important with the, as Corey said, with the internet, and they went under. They really went under. So there are a lot of guys that do this, unfortunately. I mean, right before our eyes. I mean, this is our, right before our eyes. How come? Well, they get fixated on a successful product, for example, like the 914 Xerox, on one product, they got all their money in that. And one of the things that Drucker came up with was the fact that if you're going to innovate, it's going to cost you something. In other words, you can't keep taking all kinds of new ideas and funding them, or you don't fund them very well. So he came up with the abandonment theory. Abandonment theory was, if you take something in, something's got to cease, sort of. And how many know who Jack Welch is? Okay. This guy is known as the most successful executive of the 20th century, because we're in the 21st now. So, total passe. But when he left GE, he left with the highest severance package given any CEO. A lot of, over $1 million, a lot of money.
He made $775 million on his stock, equities, and options during
I'm
the
sure
period of time.
this guy really knew what he was doing.
He left a carcass.
And when he took over GE, it was a 2,000% increase in sales. And he credits Drucker for that. And he credits Drucker because when he hired him as a consultant right after he took over, he mentioned the fact that he had all these businesses that GE was in. And Drucker said, what businesses would you get rid of if you could? And the second question is, what are you going to do about it? And he thought about it. It's a very simple statement. But Welch said that simple statement caused him to think about that. That is, if GE was going to be successful, they had to have businesses that were much more profitable than they had been. And so he decided that if a business couldn't be number one or number two in its market, he was either going to sell it or he was going to liquidate it. And that's what he did. And that decision, of course, they called him a neutron jack for a while, right? Because they said, well, he leaves the building standing, but the people were gone. But that was a strategy that he came up with based on Drucker, which was either sell it or liquidate it if you have to. But all his businesses were immensely profitable. I'd say 2,000% is not nothing when you're talking about $1 billion business anyway. But that's what he was GE CEO for about 12 years, maybe whatever. At any rate, for that period, 2,000% increase. 2,000% increase. Only forecasting on the customer today without anticipating the needs of the future. You got a different customer. Times are changing. We got a different market. People are interested in different things today than they are 30, 40 years ago. When I started the Institute of Leader Arts, I started speaking. I spoke to just before Penny had already signed me up to speak before a group of Chinese who are studying here in the States. And I'd been to China a number of times, both for the school and also as actually once as a guest of the Chinese government. And so I spoke to them here in California. And one young lady came up and said, hey, did you finally sign up? Are you a student or are you just coming to see me? Come on over and give me a hug. Good to see you. Good to see you. This young lady was my grad assistant when I was at Cal State LA 1,000 years ago. Well, because she's not the older than I am, but we had a book called The Stuff of Heroes that came out, and I hired her specifically to help me with that, and she did an incredible job. And we had a speaking engagement in Pasadena. The young lady down there said, "Well, listen, we've never had a business book that's been successful with these, book signings, because can't get enough people." And I think we had 200 people there. She said, "You'll never get more than 12 people." We had 200, and we sold lots of books. And she did a great job all the way around. I've been tried to hire her for a while for CIM, and anyway, really great. So anyway, why don't you both introduce yourself? I'm not sure. I'm with this gentleman.
I'm Alan.
Why don't you give both your full names?
Oh, Alan Quintos, Washington County.
Yeah, this is my friend. I missed you, Watsu.
So anyway, now getting back to where was I in this thing? I have to read that one, the folks in the customer.
You just finished talking about Jack Welch.
Oh yeah, that's right. So anyway, you made all this money because of that factor, and that's important. That's an important thing, to be able to do that. So it was a change that was important. Growing up, seeing only the old way. We did it one way, and so that's the only way of doing it. We don't do it any other way. Or failure to update technology and change with developments. Well, that's the internet thing. That's pretty common today, but that's not the only thing. And the internet isn't the only problem for a lot of businesses. It's another factor which you have to take you considering. In fact, CIM is a good example. We started out. How many know that we were only face to face? We taught only face to face when we first started. One day. That's right. Rob was here. Yeah, and certainly Harish was here too. We only, that's all the only way we taught. But as soon as we could, after I said, well, as soon as we get accredited, we're going to start teaching online also. And that's exactly what we did. So you gotta consider those things. That's important. Now you may think that I keep forgetting which button to press because of my stroke, but that's not so. In fact, one of the interesting things is that how many know what lumosity is?
What?
Lumosity on the internet. It's a game that you can play with your mind.
Oh, yeah.
You can join that.
Yeah.
My wife and I have been doing that for a year or so. We're not members because you got to pay money. They let you do it for free every month for three games. But I've kept records over the years, and since my stroke, I've gone up by 25%. Now I don't know why that's so. That's what I started telling you. I started telling you about making this presentation to this group of Chinese that were here, and one of my presentations, this young lady came before that I presented and said, I've read a couple of your books. I know that you have an Israeli background, that your wife is an Israeli, and my boyfriend is Israeli. And so I wonder if you would talk to me for a few minutes after the presentation. I said, that was her hook. I said, sure, okay. So I spoke with her name was Jin Zhang, and she said, I am an MD from China. I went to a good school there, and I came here. And anyway, I'm finishing up a PhD from UCLA in pharmacology, which has some bad memories from us from around here for a different reason. But anyhow, and she said, but I got interested in consulting. And at any rate, she said, I would like to work for you. And I said, well, I'd, of course I don't know, Madam, I said, send me your resume. And I said, she said, okay. So she sent her resume, and that just blew me away. Not only was she got an MD from a really good school that had already finished her residency and did a decent job, at a major hospital, and then came here, and she went to Rush University for a master's in pharmacology. Now, I had never heard of Rush University, so I Googled it. Turns out it's one of the top 5 medical schools in this country. She got a master's there, and then she applied for a PhD for UCLA. And while going there, she got interested in consulting, and so she wanted to join the consulting association at UCLA, and they wouldn't let her. They said, no, you have to take 5 courses from the Anderson School at the graduate level, and then you can join the consulting association. She took while she was getting her PhD in pharmacology, she goes and she takes 5 graduate courses like you're taking, not like you're taking, I was much tougher than UCLA, but, or should be anyway. Anyway, and,
Sorry. I have to laugh at it.
UCLA guy.
I'm doing position, of course, because I've never, like Rick, as a graduate of UCLA, I have taught some seminars there, but I've never taken them, so I don't really know. I'm just
I was teasing you, Bill. I'm sorry. Disrupt your presentation.
That's okay. It's not to ruin it. It's fine. So she takes the 5 courses while she's working on her doctorate, and so she joins the consulting association, and she leads several consulting teams like you have here. They had a competition there. She beats everybody else. Out of 12 teams, I think she was number 2. She beat everybody. She was number 2. But she was the only one who was ahead of a team that was not working on a master's in management, an MBA. She was working on her PhD in pharmacology. So, at any rate, so then a year later they elect her president of this organization. And again, she's got all kinds of contests and accolades and so forth. She's entered at having led these teams and whatever. So I thought, wow, this is really something. So I said, look, there's a problem. I said, I don't have the money to pay you anything right now. She said, I'll work for you for nothing. Oh wow. I said, okay, come out here to Pasadena. Let's have lunch and we'll talk. And I'd like you to interview with my wife because I don't know. This is a very unusual situation. Clearly, she was an unusual person. I thought probably she needed to work, get a job. But no, she already had a job. UCLA had already hired her, and she had a job here. But you wanted her to work for something with consulting. So, at any rate, I interviewed her. Marie interviewed her, and I told her, I said, look, I would be happy to hire you, but I don't have any money to pay you. We're just getting started. I just started this thing, company less than a week ago. So she said, that's okay, I work for nothing. I said, okay, that sounds like a good deal. So, at any rate,
You got a deal.
Yeah. So she got some assignments for me, and as I said, I was about to go to Mexico to do some presentations. And that's where in October, that was a month later, and that's when I got hit by a stroke. We had to cancel everything. So I figured, well, she'll leave and do whatever. I told her I got to get a job because I don't know how long it's going to take. At the time, it was laying on my back. She came to visit me in the hospital. I said, I don't know how. I think you met her, didn't you, Ron?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
She was.
I said, go to CIM, and I was going to offer. I think I offered to introduce her to Jenny, but she didn't want to do the kind of things that she didn't want to be a professor. She wanted to be a consultant. So she brought her boyfriend in to visit me also. So at the time I was immobilized in bed, so I couldn't do much of anything. But so she got a job for a consulting company up north, in Sacramento in Silicon Valley. And so she went up there, and I thought, well, that's it. She said, no, I'd like to continue to work for you. And I gave her a title of Director of Business Development, which is another strange title for someone who is a foreigner. but know that that's what she wanted to do. And she came down to visit me, and she said, and she lined some more things up. And then another guy came on board too, and he's also working for nothing, but it's a good price. And so, anyway, so we're working this thing. But she, one of the things that attracted me is the fact that she's innovative. And that's what's really critical for what we're talking about here. Innovation can have a tremendous effect. In fact, one of the things I think that attracted her to me to what I'm doing or what I've done is our consulting program here, which actually I started back at Cal State when I was there, and I've done it abroad previously. And in fact, I've done it in China. And so these kind of things are very, 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 very important for people. And if you can innovate and are willing to innovate, that's tough. And I'm not going to show you. I don't have the time to show you how to do this tonight. But that kind of thing can help you to get a job in the future in almost any company. Yeah, there's some danger in it. I can tell you at the time you're the innovator, but there's ways of getting around it. And I'll press on with this now. And what do the unsuccessful say about it with innovation? I mean, if you're the innovator, if you're the change guy, you're going to make some changes. Even if you have the authority, you can run into problems. They'll say it can't be done. It's never been done that way before, people will say. Or we don't do it that way here. That's not the kind of thing we do. I remember early on in our program here, we had a really great guy. He was the head of, well, they had a number of things that we only had 4 employees in, but he was in charge of, he had a PhD in English really, and had been the dean in Cal State LA, and he was in charge of communication, Carl Silicon. And Carl, it was really great for one thing. Our very first ad was a full-page ad in the Wall Street Journal, and it said it was you can steal a $100,000 degree for $15,000. That's all when we were non-accredited, that's all we charged. And in fact, you were involved in that too, Paul, because I think we made some photos at the time, and I wrote the copy, but this is the photographer and also the art expert then, and we saw this picture, and I had the picture made, and I had my arms crossed like this, and I didn't have any more hair, but I had just like this, still looking lean and mean, and we looked at that, and Paul said the photograph. We couldn't use the bottom part to shoot your head. I said, what do you mean? That's not my body? He said, no. He said, we used some other, we had this guy with a body, looking like this. We had his body and my head. And it was well photoshopped. We had permission from the people that had the stock photo to use it. And that by the way, we got a couple, that very first ad we brought in a couple students. One of them was a guy from San Diego, used to drive here twice a week. First the guy had to take 2 courses a week. And so he drove up here twice a week, and it was stay at a hotel. And when he had he was on a try before buy, and he said, look, I came in to see him, and he said, I'd really like to stay, but I just don't know how I'm going to do this thing for a year. To drive up twice a week from San Diego, I just don't know how I'm going to do it. So I'll probably have to drop. I said, well, very sorry to see, and he was a very good student. He was top of his class. This is not the pharmacology guy, by the way.
No, this is Philippe, right?
Yeah, exactly. Philippe.
Engineer from Northwestern.
Yeah. And Philippe really loved the program, and by golly, we actually changed it to make it more flexible, because we weren't teaching internet at the time, but allow him to take 1 course at a time. Because we figured driving twice it was too much. He signed up for both courses, and he finished within a year. Yeah, Philippe was and right at the top of his class. He really, really believed in that. So sometimes even your most difficult innovations work, but it can be done. But Carl Selkin said, Carl was a real academic, and the ad said, how to steal $100,000 degree for $15,000. He couldn't believe that we were really going to say that in an ad, in a full-page ad in the Wall Street Journal. He came to see me privately. He said, "Bill, please don't do that. Don't do it. It'll ruin the reputation of the school, and the academics will never get accredited, and it'll be awful." And like I say, it was successful. I thought
We got 5 great students out of that.
Is that right?
Who actually made contributions to the institution, especially in consulting. They're all mature, successful people. We got an MD, we got a surety bond broker. We got Philippe, a 50-year-old Northwestern BSEE.
And he said this was the greatest program I ever went through.
Oh, I'm glad to know that.
Yeah, he was very happy.
I had
Copies every year
to
with the
classes. He was really a workaholic.
I never had him as a student.
He was a workaholic.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, he had to be something to drive up here twice on.
And he produced
Twice
papers
a
about
week.
that thick.
Is that right?
Reading them.
So anyway, so it can be done. Never done that way. Don't do it that way here. It won't work. We're sure to fail. Our students, board creditors, someone else won't like it. He calls it the academics would like it. No. I guess only the higher academics like that's why I think it's important to me. And we're making tons of money with what we've been doing, the way we've been doing it. That type of thing. So there's always a lot of reason not to do things. I changed this whole thing a couple hours ago because I thought I should mention the Model T in a lot of ways. This is the most, as a car, it was most successful in history. It sold 15 million, and the thing was in manufacturing that was being sold for almost 20 years. It was the first affordable car, sold for roughly $500. It was very efficient fabrication. That Ford, was known for its production methods. It had interchangeable parts. Ford was asked because it was only came in, it was black, just like this one here. And he did not want to change anything. And he said a customer, and he was very famous, this is, made it in newspapers and everything. He says a customer can have any color he wants, so long as it's black. So that was his idea about satisfying customers. He figured, and in fact, he made a statement that the car is already perfect as it is. There doesn't need to be any change whatsoever in anything to do with the Model T. So he sold 15 million cars, and that's good. But as other companies, like GM, General Motors, offered comfort and styling advantages at competitive prices, Ford lost its lead for almost 40 years in the business, almost 40 years. And what finally changed it was in 1967, it was Lee Iacocca with the Ford Mustang, which itself was a highly innovative car. It was like a sports car, but it wasn't a sports car. It was very much like a sports car. He had done the research. It had 4-on-the-floor, the stick shift. It had padded dash. It had bucket seats. I mean, this was a regular car. You never saw something like that. I liked it. I used to drive sports cars all the time. Like I am again, by the way, like cars, it's here today. I still drive sports cars. But I bought a Mustang, and I had a Mustang. That's the car that I courted my wife in. And what most impressed her was I lent her the car. Bet she didn't know that, did you? Yeah, I lent her the car. And to tell a quick story in verse, if you know Chicago, they have these great freeways all around there. She somehow managed to get on the freeway going the wrong direction.
Oh, no.
I don't know how she did that. And she does not like you mentioning it, but it's a true statement. But anyway, so you got to watch what the heck you're doing. Innovation is, as Drucker said, is the key. You got to do that or you're going to fail eventually. And it's something of import that you have to sell to someone else. He said, innovate or evaporate. That's what I called this presentation. Innovate or evaporate. Now, we've got a lot of proven innovations around here, and they will all be obsolete eventually. But here they are. These are things that nobody else does. Interaction with professors from top universities from around the world. We've cut that back to some extent. But we have professors from Harvard, Yale, Princeton, UCLA, of course, SC also to be equal time, And, but every major name school, we've had the guy, in fact, the guy from Harvard, we had a finance guy from Harvard, whose name was my name, but I don't know him from Adam, you know, I mean, he doesn't know me. But he said to Harish that, look, you don't have to pay me. We pay these guys to do that. Call me at any time, and I'll do it. What you're doing is a distinguished public service, some words to that effect, right, Harish? Because Harish did the recruiting for that. And these are great. No other school in the world does that. And let's see what else we do. Completion in less than 1 year, 2 years, or hybrid with internet. You know, we've gotten flexible with that. Consulting in numerous courses. We used to have in every single course. We've cut back a little bit on that, but we have consulting in many courses right now. And this is a chance where you learn things and do things. You have accomplishments that you got. And it's nice to have case studies, but case studies are theoretical. You don't get to sweat blood. You don't get classmates that are not interested, or they're working late, or they've got their own problems, going through a divorce, 10,000 other different reasons, sick. And so that's real life, because that's what happens when you're a leader. You got to learn how to lead. So we do this in many courses. And are you having it right now? I don't know if you are or not. Do you have any consulting in your course now?
Not this particular one. And that wasn't so much because I've got 5 in the pipeline right now. But after WASC came and told us what their requirements were as far as the relationship between the client, the project with the client and the course materials was, I may have overreacted on the conservative side. So leadership is hard, okay? You can't go out to somebody who owns 2 dry cleaners in his family business and say, hey man, maybe we can help you out with your leadership. I mean, first of all, most small business people are pretty narcissistic and think they already learned the last thing that the universe had to teach them about leadership the week before last. So we're doing a case study for this one, but I'm working with Paul, who's a very innovative guy, which is why he's our marketing guy. And we've been looking for some other ways to tie the usual small business client or the nonprofit client. The courses like leadership, we just need to spin it. So we're developing some. The cases work okay, Bill, but you're right. The consulting projects are so much more substantial. And all those great people that your Wall Street Journal had brought in, people who didn't need an MBA, when I had surveyed all of our students last fall to see what they liked, didn't like, et cetera, about the program, down to the last one, they said the projects are what make this school worth going to. That was that was what they said. Yeah. So we're going to cleave to this fiercely. We'll use cases as a default when we can't find a suitable client, but I'm confident that every student who enters here right now will do at least 8 consulting projects.
Great.
Maybe not 12, but at least 8, and I think that's
it's still a good number. Yeah, this is really good. Yeah, I tried to hire Paul when I was here. I offered him twice my salary. He turned it down.
It's like Paul's like this.
all professors have doctorates of law degrees. I don't know if that's still true or not.
Well, we all have doctorates.
Or law degrees or something, long terminal degree. Nobody else does it. Even UCLA doesn't do that. SC doesn't do that. Or Claremont, where I've got my PhD, doesn't do that. Free textbooks.
Yes.
Try before buy. We still doing that?
Yes.
That's it. These are real innovations. Nobody else does that. In other words, you sign up for the course and you take the course and you decide whether you're going to pay afterward. But if you don't, of course, you can't stay here. But if you want to stay and fill in this program, you got to pay them. Actual management work evaluated, no tests. And the lessons that I want to point out is innovation not only about technology, it can be about a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of different things.
Good lesson indeed, Bill.
So finally, there's a good shot of Peter, and it's feeling pretty good. And he was mostly like, as I remember him, sure, when he got to be my age, he looked just about lifetime in some way. In fact, to tell you the truth, I got to tell you, you know that picture out here of Peter? I swear to you, this is true. I had many people in this building that would talk to me and say, "That's a great picture of you." And so finally, I had our we had a receptionist, not Brian, but we had before Brian. And I said, make a darn thing that says that Peter is dead, you know. And so now we got, you know, born to Peter Drucker, you know, 1892 or 98 to 2015 or whatever. And still they came up to me and said, "That's a great picture of you." And I said, "Yeah, and I'm dead."
He's alive.
So anyway, but anyway, he used to say at the end of his seminars, not the end of the class necessarily, he'd say, "Don't tell me how much you enjoyed my presentation. Tell me what you're going to do differently on Monday morning." Well, I don't care what you're going to do differently on Monday morning, but what are you going to do differently as a result of my pitch? That you got to innovate. There's none in your head.
Bill, I'd like to make a comment about what I got out of your presentation.
Please, I'm going to have to sit down. I'm sorry. It's
Please do.
one of the things that's
One of the things I got out of it was, you probably remember back in the 70s and 80s, like when Wick and Skinner wrote books like The Focus Factory, about how you had to stick to your knitting and build on what you were good at. And I mean, there's a lot of truth to that. But all the examples you showed of great businesses that, you know, eventually disappeared,
Evaporate.
they must have read Wick and Skinner. No, they stuck to their knitting, but they got so into what they were doing that they lost sight of the competitive environment. And as you pointed out, in several instances, they actually had possession of innovations that might only have saved them, but could have caused them to thrive. But you got a theory about what caused them to avoid even looking at those opportunities. What's your theory?
If there's a theory, well, I think this is it. I mean, and Drucker had looked at that also to find out why. And these are some of the reasons I stated about it, that you get really focused about one thing that you're doing, and you can forget everything else. Apple had that problem for a while. They were really successful with the Apple II, and it was very difficult for Steve Jobs to get them to move from that into something different. Came with different models, but they did not innovate certainly not as he did. And so there are a lot of reasons for it. I mean, you get involved in what you're doing. It's just like Jenny has made a lot of changes since I left, and some of them I agree with, some of them I don't. But it's her show, and she does it. And I know in my heart of hearts that these are good things. I mean, these are things that need to be done. Nothing remains the same forever. So we have to change, and we have to move forward. And so when we don't, that's what can cause us to have problems. I think. Can I answer any questions in general? Or let me rephrase that, because I'm the one that usually criticizes that. If you're speaking, you shouldn't say, "What are there any questions?" You say, "What questions can I answer?" So, right? So what questions can I answer about anything?
Would you say that innovation is the responsibility of the leader to take charge, or is it sprung naturally throughout?
It's primarily the leader has to take because the leader is responsible. But if you have good ideas, now the question is, how do you sell them to others? Because you should sell them. If you're a member here, I mean, I would think, and I'm sure Jenny feels the same about this, that if you have some great ideas about how to market or anything for that matter, that you present it to her and you're able to sell it to others, that's a really good thing to do. They appreciate that. Yes, sir.
Is it the two areas to innovate, the product and the process, or there's more to that innovation in those two areas?
Well, that's what, when I saw, I said there were two areas that Drucker stated. One of them is innovation. What do you think the other one is?
I am good for entrepreneurship.
Customer.
No, the other
Innovation
thing,
creates a customer.
no, this is, you guys should all know this, and I should have also, I wouldn't have thought, marketing.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, that's why I said
Yeah.
customer.
And the other thing that strikes me is, because you just brought up product, is product requires, a new product requires innovation. So I sometimes, when I'm talking about marketing, I say, well, Drucker said that there are two primary things that in driving any business, two basic functions. One of them is innovation, or one of them is marketing, and the other is innovation, which is really, in some sense, part of marketing. So, yeah, I think I'm answering your question. I'm not sure, but
Well, I was curious about that too. I just finished teaching his innovation, and entrepreneurship for about the 5th time. And one of the things that Drucker said that is actually counterintuitive. And I make it an exercise for the students to figure this out. But when he says the purpose of a business is to create a customer, innovation is embedded in that, because in order to create a customer, as opposed to exploit the markets that already exist, you have to produce a product or service that satisfies needs that customers didn't know they had until they saw your product or service.
give you a competitive advantage, yeah.
Yes, and that way you get a blue ocean for a little while until the other predators come in, right? Then you're talking Michael Porter and not Peter Drucker anymore.
Well, he expected the competition.
Although Drucker actually did anticipate Michael Porter, he wasn't even generous enough to credit him for what he anticipated.
Well, Michael Porter it was really kind of funny, because when I first started teaching marketing, about 19, how long ago was that? What, about 30 years now. And Michael Porter was known as a wonder kid. He just got his PhD, and he just started, and he was very, very successful. And it's very unclear in some ways. Well, he came from Michael Porter, you may not know this, his father was a full colonel in the Army. So he came from a military background. And some of the things that he said were, very, very strategic, and you can really see this. Drucker also, which was surprising, I was amazed at how much what Drucker knew about military history. And after I graduated and we became, friends, he would start discussing it at some great level. And he also had a great deal, not that he believed in marketing warfare or something like that, but that there were insights that he really, really liked the military. And he thought, there was much to be admired in all fields. And it's interesting, the military also, to a certain extent, have picked up some of the language of business and talks about marketing in the sense of not necessarily warfare itself, but in support operations. But
the Army is, and the Air Force are exemplary. The guy that founded FedEx was an ex-Air Force guy, Fred Smith.
yeah.
And he took the idea of using multiple time zones and having a hub in Memphis from his work as a logistics officer in the Air Force. And I'll say, just from my own personal experience, knowing Army and Air Force people, that there's no business in America that provides better leadership training than the U.S. Armed Forces. I'm very proud. I'm proud that my tax dollars are going.
Well, yes, anyway. Yeah, Frances Hesselbein is one of our board members. She was one of the advisors when I was president. And she's over 100 right now, so she's not as sharp as she once was. She has done some amazing things, though. She became a volunteer for the Girl Scouts because of her own children. And then eventually she was so good that they offered her a position. And when the Girl Scouts had problems, they finally asked her to head the Girl Scouts, and she was the CEO of the Girl Scouts of America. And she got she did so well in turning it around that she got the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And so she did some amazing things. And she also has partnered with a number of generals, including myself, in running about leadership. And one of her books on leadership, Peter Drucker had written a testimonial, and he said, the Army, and of course he meant the armed forces, but he said the Army develops more leaders than any other organization in the United States, and at a much lower loss rate. You know, Peter always said things in a better way.
Wow.
Let me take one question now. Yeah,
It's
Harish?
not a question, it's a comment. This gentleman asked whether the innovations are in product or process. I think if you look at most of the recent companies, Apple, Facebook, Google, they are into creating human connections. If you look at Facebook, 2 billion people are using Facebook. Google is coming up with more and more technology where it connects one human to another and so on. Google Docs, you know. So I think now the new companies see the value of connecting people no matter where they are in the world. And that's where, the technology is being used to connect humanity. So that's where,
I believe in that, actually.
yeah, that's where most of the innovation, Steve Jobs, Zuckerberg, Tesla's Elon Musk,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, it's connectivity. So that's I think most of the.
So what they're actually doing is they're taking a technological infrastructure that's already in place and maybe having to develop software patches to tie it together. But so would that be that's an interesting question. Is that a product? If I just look for the time of view, software is a product and a process.
Yeah, I think so.
Well, it doesn't have to be a product. Remember that a service is a product also.
Right.
A procedure is not a product, but it's something. It's certain procedures in themselves. And we talked about the CIM's procedures or innovations. So what else?
Can you ever innovate too much?
Well, you such a question. Yeah, you could. I was head of R&D for a company one time. I first got back from Israel back in 1973. It was and my boss was the president, and I was head of R&D. And he had 20 years earlier he'd been head of R&D, and he was an ideal man, and he always had 1,000 ideas. And I walked in like Monday when you say he called me up. We had a little shack, the R&D guys. We had eventually about a dozen guys working for me. We had a shack, and he'd call up and he said, "Bill, can you come here? I'd like to talk to you for a few minutes." And I knew it was coming, and I had my little notebook and everything. I'd come down there, and he'd say, "Bill, I just thought of a new helmet. Why I'd like you to start working on such and such helmet." And I'd say, "Boss, that's going to cost some money. Which one of these, here's a list that one of my guys are working on now. Which one of these shall I drop while I pull that one in?" And he grit his teeth and everything. But I wouldn't budge in that position because when I got in, I was the company was about a 40 or 50-year-old company. But I was about the third or fourth R&D manager in less than a dozen years, in about 5 years. And something's got to, in fact, the guy that preceded me was the man of the year for the plastic industry, and they fired him. So I was pretty peculiar. I was very careful about how I was operating, and I soon saw the problem. That was the problem, is he had a lot of ideas, and and of course he was the boss, and so they would try to do it, but you can't do it. I mean, there is a limit, and so when you can't do that, you can't do it. I mean, it's a great idea, but you don't have it. So I've tried to be sensitive. I try to be sensitive about that myself, and because there's a lot of different things that you can do. So you just if you're leading the organization or in a position, you have to guard it to make sure that so many ideas that are going to kill you.
Yeah, so then your title would be Innovate and Evaporate.
Yeah, you spread yourself too thin, so thin you
Harish
evaporate.
always had a conference.
So there's kind
That's
of
true. Look, I promised to
a
finish,
optimum in there
and
somewhere.
Rick, I know, is well organized, and as a professor, having been one myself, I know that sort of thing that can happen is have some speaker come in and take all your time. So
You were right on time,
I
Bill.
know it. And like I say, you're the first ones that I have spoken before in almost a year, about a year. Yeah, October 21st was it in my stroke, so I'm a little short of a year. But this is the first time, so
It's good to see
appreciate
you
it.
back, Bill.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good job.
Thank you.